The night the cold rattled our windows like a pocket full of pebbles, I woke to an empty square of snow where our old F-150 should have been. The kitchen door stood ajar, a thin river of winter cutting through the house. A note on the fridge, pinned by the Fairbooth magnet, read, "I never wanted kids. I'm cramped, breathless, done. Jake was the last straw. Don't look for me." My mother's round schoolgirl hand. Dad slept in the recliner with his bad knee propped. Jake breathed kitten soft in the crib. I washed my hands in biting water until they stopped shaking. When the words in the note blurred into static, I noticed a drawer under the sink sitting crookedly. The yellow folder, taxes on the land, diesel receipts for the generator, the barn's insurance, was gone. With a flashlight, I followed rough, urgent ruts from the porch to the road. The porch light flickered like a single tired eye. In the shed, the hook where the tractor keys should hang was bare. She'd never touched our paperwork. She called it dust. That night, she took the dust. I brewed Dad tea and pulled the blanket back over his shoulders. "Dad, the truck is gone," I said, voice rasping. He read the note in silence, fingertips pinning the paper like it might run. Then one small nod, recognition, shame, relief, as if air finally said what it had been holding back for years. No school for Jake, storm, and check the shed. No why. No, she'll be back. We opened drawers, inventories, medical cards, old letters, all there. Only the yellow folder is missing. The wind began to moan in the walls like it was flipping our ledgers itself. While water hissed to a boil, last week stitched together. The way she stared at the line on the map near the Howards boundary, how she asked whether the old party line in the barn still worked, if the notary in Maple Ridge kept Saturday hours. Back then it was a gnat at the window. This morning it was a dark smudge with legs. By dawn, we did what we knew. I scraped the steps, fed the stove, checked locks. Dad, hunched at the table, opened his notebooks. Property tax, bank receipts, the barn's insurance, each phrase a nail set into cedar. We wrote a list of what is ours, so we wouldn't lose ourselves among empty hooks and shiny neon dreams she'd run toward. When the light finally lifted, I headed for the barn. The air there smelled of oil and cold iron. Between jars of screws lay a copy of the parcel map. I slid it out like pulling something from water. Lines for fences, and at the bottom a fine print number I always mistook for a date. The same number she'd mentioned last week, laughing it would make a good password. Back in the kitchen, I laid the map on crumbs of yesterday's bread. We bent over it like an icon. For the first time since the night, I didn't wonder if she'd return with apologies. I wondered why she needed the folder, and why the note didn't carry one use of the word sorry. Snow packed into shaggy balls on the wind. The neighbors' dogs tore at the quiet. That noise, ordinary and rough, steadied me. Morning meant we'd been given a day not to let someone else's hands redraw our life under their number. People ask how we survived that winter, and I tell them lists in notebooks, hooks for keys, the diesel number written on the can, and again in Dad's ledger. Truth is, order had been saving us long before the note. Our house was always two houses, one with bread and pine, one with quick exits and doors that closed mid-sentence. In the first, Dad and I learned to bleed radiators and shut the well for a hard freeze. In the second, Mom joked that paperwork was dust and swept it under a cloth. After her disappearances, I stopped counting hours and counted tasks. Feed Jake, heat a stone for the crib, start the generator before the frost bit the lines, listen to pipes. Aunt Liza left sacks of apples on the porch and said the kind of words that make a house real. "You're holding up." At school, people whispered. Not mean, just uncomfortable. At the fair, Mrs. Harper asked if I was still not Jake's mama, so I bought nails and walked away. When Mom returned, she did it like she'd never left. City pastries and glossy encyclopedias you could mark with chemical pencils. She'd talk about wet asphalt shining at night downtown, and I believed every drop. Then she'd carry her cup to the sink and brush a finger against the magnet that held our parcel number. "Pretty set of digits," she'd laugh, childlike over a riddle solved. One summer, she brought a gift, a pack of markers and an old rotary phone for games so we don't waste minutes. I parked it in the barn by the screws and oil, forgot it until last week when she asked whether the notary still worked Saturdays and whether the Howard's cornerstone had heaved under snow. Domestic words, but in her mouth, they tasted like keys. We grew like ditch grass, rain above, dust below. Dad walked with a stick and taught me to listen to pipes in a freeze, compared diesel receipts not from suspicion, but for rhythm. The land lives like a clock. Birch smells like bark in March. Pollen settles on frames in July. November grass laughs when you crush it. Mom wasn't in that rhythm. She came, turned the dial up, and left. Once, Dad and I hauled grain, and she watched from the window. The curtain cast a grid on her cheek, letting only light through. "You'll manage," she said. No malice, just the confidence people save for their own plans. My first real suspicion wasn't her changes, but the silence around her. In the kitchen, she froze before my fridge list and smiled, not at me, at the clean columns. She asked about updating the barn policy, which had always been Dad's chore. She said it was smart to keep copies out of the house and tapped my notebook where I wrote everything, even who grabbed the mail. That night, I stopped leaving it on the table. After we found the map copy, our language changed. Not, will she come back, but what exactly does she want signed? Dad pressed a finger to the parcel number. "County folks were here last year. Talked about a conservation program, compensation if you enroll acreage. Needs all owners to sign, even if one's not on the latest deed. Your mother and I didn't agree." Today, I know silence is an answer, sometimes the truest one. Our silence held the route to Maple Ridge, notary hours, and that old barn line she'd never use because she never lived in the barn. We listed the things that hold a house: account numbers, neighbor names, the mailman's Tuesday loop, and separately, our boundaries, the kind you can't redraw without us. I pulled every file we had into the light and photographed them with the rotary phone's cheap camera. Not from fear, from a decision. If someone wanted to play a paper game with me, I'd play better. I hid copies in 3 places: the bread box, the tool box, and Grandma's Bible. When new tire tracks scarred the road that afternoon, I knew whoever was coming back wasn't a mother. She was a purpose, and I already had a plan, made of simple tools, my hands, and the order that saves you when love can't. Fresh tire marks appeared near noon, while the snow still held morning's crust. A city sedan idled in our lane, looking cooled on our road. She stepped out in a coat that had never tasted dust. Hair neat, lips warm, eyes like asphalt. She didn't mount the porch at once. She circled the lilac, glanced at the cornerstone, tapped the old meter, checking the house's pulse. "You've grown up?" she said instead of hello. "Where's Jake?" "At home." "Asleep." She smiled like it was part of her plan. In the kitchen, she set leather gloves where the yellow folder once lay and placed a light brown windowed envelope beside them. I sat opposite so the table could be a ruler between us. "I've come to tidy up a few formalities," she said. "Remember the county program? Enroll the land, get compensation for upkeep? We just need signatures from all parties. It's for you guys," she added, as if there were a crowd here. Dad leaned on the doorframe in silence, a vein pressed at his wrist. She drew papers from the envelope. The parcel number, her pretty digits, was printed at the top. She traced it with a nail like a guitarist finding a chord. "Oh," I said evenly. "Where's the yellow folder?" "Why would you need it?" she asked, surprise sipped like tea. "I have copies. Better than yours. City folks helped." Helped, the way people say they called a lawyer. She softened her voice. "Don't make a mountain. Your name is a formality. Sign, and we all get paid. The notary in Maple Ridge does Saturdays. We'll meet. Nice coffee there." Saturday. My schedule shifted one notch in my head. I slid the forms back like they smelled of wet ink. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Before the note." "Oh, the note." She fluttered it away. "I was stressed. I'm a woman. It happens. Don't hold it against me." "I'm a woman," aimed at a lock that wasn't hers. She pushed a pen across the table. Fine, gold-ringed. I didn't take it. "And Jake's guardianship? Is he a party on these forms too?" "A pencil skip, then. I've consulted. Nothing complicated. You're not against doing what's best for the family, are you?" The smile was all winter. "By the way, do you still have that rotary phone in the barn? Funny thing, but some offices like a landline confirmation." I nodded like we were discussing the weather. She nudged the envelope toward me. I read consent, ownership, transfer, compensation, margins for initials. Her initials already printed, dry as toner. "Saturday, at 10, she said, standing. "We'll talk like adults." Her eyes flicked, too fast to be casual, toward the hook where the folder had hung. Then the smile returned, tidy as a receipt, and she left. Her heel marks on the porch looked like parentheses closing a sentence. I closed the door and felt something click. Not fear, procedure. I lifted the envelope by the corners like alien skin. In the barn, I set it beside the old phone, wiped the dust ring from the dial, and lifted the receiver. The line breathed, a low, honest hum. I laid my voice recorder next to it. Battery's good. When I slid the drawer of wrenches, I saw that my hand was steady. I said, "Saturday," into the space, just to hear my voice. "It'll be ours." The brown envelope lay as if weightless. I pulled on cotton gloves. Silly, but I wanted nothing of me on it. Return address, the county office, a skinny case ID. Inside, forms that called my home an asset and us parties. The distribution of compensation line was blank. The recipient line already wore her name in cafe menu script. I didn't call Mom. I called the county program on the Rotary, not to fight, but to verify. For my own order. "Land programs," a woman said, practical as gravel. I read her the parcel number, said we had multiple owners. Keys capped, each click threading into me. "Your file shows a preliminary packet," she said. "Status, conditionally approved, awaiting signatures from all parties. By default, funds go to the applicant. You can change the distribution, but that triggers an addendum. Again, all parties must sign. And if one party is a minor under guardianship," my voice thinned on the last word, "then we need proof of guardianship at the time of signing. If the applicant is the guardian, we request written confirmation from all other parties. Without that, nothing moves," she said, and her nothing felt merciful. "Looks like you're booked at the Maple Ridge Notary this Saturday. I see the reminder." I thanked her, held the warm receiver a while, then recorded a memo. Applicant, her. Default funds, her. Needs all signatures. Jake equals party, guardianship required.
Saturday, 10 a.m., Maple Ridge. Speaking was like setting a joist. I walked to Aunt Liza's, where the house smelled like cinnamon even when nothing simmered. I knew she'd come back for peeper, not love, Liza said, clicking her little cat stapler through my notes until stray phrases Saturday, notary, compensation became one strip. Don't sign anything. Don't go alone. I won't, I said, and the first smile of the day found me. Back home, the film of her movements replayed. Glove on the meter, glance at the cornerstone, that offhand bit about the landline. She hadn't returned as a mother. She moved like a person with a plan. Number, notary, default flow of money. Her "we get paid" meant I get paid. Dad sat over his ledgers, hands gentler than fever cloth. "Well?" he asked without looking up. "Applicant here, conditional approval, Saturday. No money without us. With us, the money goes to her unless we rewrite it in black and white." He nodded. "Then we don't go to ask, we go on to state that we are parties, not an appendix to her plan." I spread what holds a house, the map copy, diesel receipts, the Barnes policy, the clinic note about Dad's knee, and Jake's school papers. Not numbers, us. On a clean page, I wrote, "Our terms." My hand stayed steady. Late that night, with snow whispering like turned pages, I replayed my voice memo. It didn't sound like a child anymore. It sounded like someone ready to lay our plan next to hers. And the road to Maple Ridge was a ruler. Straight, cold, snowbanks marked like inches. In my pack, the map copy, receipts, our terms, the recorder, and the old rotary phone, a talisman of a line that doesn't lie. Dad came. Liza promised to swing by the bakery right at 10, which meant she'd appear when needed. No big speeches. Around here, we work in order. The notary's office smelled like vending machine coffee. A calendar with a deer stared past us like a man used to secrets. She was already at the table, in that dustless coat, arranging forms into a perfect stare. The same envelope lay by her hand. The notary, neat beard, checked IDs. "Wonderful. We're all here," she said in a coffee-sweet voice. "We'll sign and finally close the formalities." "We'll start with terms," I said, laying our sheet on the table. "Distribution into escrow for the barn repairs and insulation. Guardianship, Dad is Jake's guardian at signing. We sign only with this addendum." Her smile turned passport flat. "Don't complicate it. Standard. The applicant gets the funds, then I—" "No," I said. "Every signature tied to distribution for the household. Into escrow. Addendum attached. Guardianship is explicitly documented. No transfers without all parties' written consent. No personal disbursements. Only household expenses, receipt verified." The notary nodded. "Feasible," he said. "I'll draft an addendum. All parties sign. Give me 10 minutes. Her smile cracked. I touched the recorder. Also, for the record, the initial packet was filed without our consent, and the yellow folder left our house the night before. We're logging that today. She eyed the recorder like a fly. "Seriously? Don't make a scene." The door opened. Aunt Liza slid in with a paper cup and a bag of rolls. "Oh, hi," she said, truly or not. She set her cat stapler near the edge like a decoration. My breathing eased. "Fine," Mom said to the notary. "If this escrow circus speeds things up, I'll agree. But the guardianship clause is unnecessary. Why bring that in?" "Because Jake is a party," I said. "And guardianship doesn't hang in the air. Also, clause that no funds move without all parties' written consent, and that distribution can't be altered without each party's written consent. clause banning direct personal use, household only, against invoices. The notary typed, the printer hummed like tires over slush. Pages slid out clean, with bridges where swamps used to be. He pointed to places for initials. Dad signed first, slow, like setting the last picket in a fence. I signed next. She signed last, jaw tight. "One more note," I said as the seal thumped. "I'm calling the county today to log the distribution change and the fact that these conditions ride with the packet. I already spoke with them. I have the recording." Her skin jumped near the ear, a muscle I remembered from years ago when I told her not to read my diary. When we stepped outside, the city snow had turned porridge soft. Liza's nod felt like a final staple setting. Dad held the key fob like a pulse. A stone I'd been carrying slid off my chest. Not triumph, but just order back in its slot. That evening, I hung the yellow folder on its hook again, fatter, with copies. I wasn't waiting for apologies. I was waiting for Monday, the county call, new invoices, and a lumber list. And the kind of quiet where you can hear pipes sing. On Monday, I called the county. A different woman answered. Same keyboard hymn. I read the parcel number, our names, and said, "We filed an addendum, distribution into escrow for barn repairs and insulation, guardianship with Dad, no direct payouts." She asked me to check my email. The message read, "Amendment recorded. Disbursement on hold until escrow instructions are filed by a licensed contractor." The sentences sat straight as rafters. I felt the order click like a lock. By afternoon, Mom texted, "Can we talk?" A city number. I set the phone down. Not revenge. Timing. Another ping. "Why did you make this so hard? I was trying to help." I slid it to Dad. He read not the words, but the between. "She always helps herself," he said, and put the truck keys in the drawer with the teeth pointing out, ready for any door that said, "Just a minute." We built the escrow packet. Catalogs, tool receipts, and 3 contractor bids. Aunt Liza read the fine print without glasses, says it keeps her from missing where people swap words. Each point we set with her cat stapler. Click, click, like fastening boards. On Tuesday, Mike Howard crossed the boundary, laughing as usual. "Heard about the program," he said. "Want help with the cornerstone and a pipe sky?" We took it not as charity, but participation. People who'd borrowed grain in the fall paying back in trust. Wednesday, the old barn line shivered in the wall. I lifted the rotary and listened to the low oh of a network that doesn't care who's hurt. It just carries sound. "Old things are good 'cause they don't lie," Liza said from the door, setting down a cinnamon packet for Jake's oatmeal. "Kids grow on smells," she added. Jake burst in with a notebook drawing. Our house, smoke from the stove, the porch light glowing yellow. "So you know where we are," he said solemnly. I nodded. "I do." Thursday, a county inspector stomped the yard in rubber boots, counted steps from porch to cornerstone, and photographed the meter and barn. I showed him the yellow folder, the keys, a patchwork of copies. He spoke in plumbed sentences and didn't ask extra questions. "Good. You keep records," he said at the truck. "Most folks show up with air. Words float loose when there's no paper to nail them down." Friday, another text. "I'll come Saturday. I want to see Jake." I read it twice. "We don't hide," Dad said. "We're just not part of her plan." We agreed. Meet on the porch, under the light, daylight where snow, trees, and people are visible. No kitchen, no table, no room where the line can bend voices. She arrived at 11:50. Stopped at the boundary, like remembering where hers ends. The door clicked. She looked up at the porch light, still burning by day. "You keep that on now?" she asked. I shrugged. Signal. She looked at Jake, taller, someone else and still ours. Hi, she said. He answered softly. Third time in days, she asked, Can we talk? I said nothing, not for lack of words, but to choose the right place for them. We talk here, I said. Paper we did at the notary. Money with the county. If we talk about us, it's only if you know the difference between those. I'm not a monster, she whispered at the field. I wanted out. I looked at her hands. Clean, soft, no paper dust under the nails, no oil in the lines. Runaways don't come back for folders. They come back for people. When you want people, call. Our line works. I pointed to the Barnes rotary. She flinched. Not at the phone, at the knowledge that order won't blink. She stood a minute, learned there'd be no bargain, and went to the car. Snow squeaked under heels like paper under a stapler. Final, tidy. I watched the tracks disappear into the road and thought about how some things don't need closure. They align when boundaries are set. That night, Dad backed the truck into the barn, and I parked it straight for the first time, rail to rail. Jake turned on the porch light that said, ceremonially, like the movies. We laughed the way people laugh when they finally exhale. I photographed the yellow folder on the took, my finger steadying the frame. When sleep did come, I dreamed the porch light burned morning and night. Not a beacon for the lost, but a mark for us. We live here. We are parties in no one else's packet. We are a household by order when love fails the job. And love, it does return quietly when you stop chasing it between signatures. It shows up when Jake, passing by, nudges the yellow folder with 2 fingers so it hangs just right.